Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another gameplay series where we are going to go over Portal 2, which is one of my favorite games. This came out in 2011 from developer Valve. It was introduced for the platforms Windows, Mac, Linux, PS3, Xbox 360, and is now available on Steam. I will also caution those that are planning to maybe buy it on Steam for Mac. You may run into some issues. I tried playing it on a Mac and it said that 32-bit wasn't supported, so I wasn't able to play it and I had to switch over to a PC. This came out, as I said, in 2011, and it won about 24 awards, including Best PC Game from Game Critics, Best Game Design from Game Developer Choice Awards, Game of the Year from the 8th British Academy Game Awards, DLC of the Year from the Golden Joystick Awards. So some pretty prestigious awards, and it did really well when it first came out. It was the highest. It was the highest selling game for the first week, and then Mortal Kombat came out and it kind of took over. So this has a very nice cast also. Playing the voice of GLaDOS is Ellen McLean. And for Wheatley, we have Stephen Merchant. And then coming in as Cave Johnson, we have J.K. Simmons. We do have other voice actors involved in this, doing background voices and things like that. But for the most part, throughout the game, you're just going to interact with GLaDOS, Wheatley, and Cave, especially if you're playing the single player campaign. Being a 2011 game, I was really surprised how well it's held up. Now, it's been about, I would say, a good almost 6 years since I've last played this game, but I was expecting it to kind of maybe not look as polished, and yes, it doesn't stand up like maybe next to something like the new Horizon Zero Dawn or the new Last of Us, or even the new Resident Evil. Those games have like some really fantastic graphics, but this game, being from 2011, still looks amazing, and I was very surprised at how fantastic it looked on the screen. So beyond that, I would say that the controls still really relatable. Now, this was the first time I've ever, and I mean first time ever, played on a PC. So one thing I will caution those players that maybe want to pick this up for like the PS3, I know for sure. I'm not sure about the Xbox 360, but for the PS3, I ran into some protocol issues. So when I was trying to do game capture, there's the DCHP, I believe it's called, which was blocking me from being able to capture video, which was really frustrating. It took me about 2 days to figure out, and then I finally had to give up. I tried a couple different fixes, and I know there's a couple different fixes, but I didn't have a lot of time to spend on it. So I ended up downloading this for Steam, and then that's where I found out that you can't really play it on a Mac anymore, but you can still definitely play it on a PC. So I downloaded it for Steam, and this was going to be my first introduction into playing it on a keyboard and mouse. For me, that was a really big challenge, especially in the beginning. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm trying to get this right. I've always played on a console because I've worked mainly on computers all my life. So the last thing I want to do is then game on a computer as well. So I've always preferred having that controller experience and just being, sitting on a couch instead of like sitting at a desk with a computer. So I found this to be a little bit jarring in the beginning for me, and you will notice that like in my gameplay, my movements are a little more jerkier. They're not as smooth as when I play on a controller, but still, I would say that it wasn't difficult to maneuver. I thought I was going to have a really, really hard time maneuvering through the game, and there were some things that I did find a little bit difficult. For example, I was stubborn and I didn't look up like how to sprint, and I know that you can sprint in this game, So there were times where I was a little frustrated because I was like, oh my God, I'm moving so slow. And sometimes during some of the jumps, I was like, okay, I need a little more momentum. So one of these days I'll figure out how to do it on PC, and I just really need to look it up. I know I do. But other than that, the controls are fairly simple, even for any beginner user. If you've never played this game, whether you're going to play it on a PC or you're going to play it on a console, the controls are not that difficult. They're fairly easy to get down, and I find them to be very enjoyable to play. They're not like jarring. They're not, why is this here, kind of thing, where sometimes certain developers may want to create their own controller layout, and it's like, why break something that's not broken? So I was happy that the controls are still the same. Design wise, I think this game still looks fantastic. Being from 2011, it still looks great. It still looks fairly polished. I've always liked the design of this game. It's very simple. They stick to a very specific color palette, which is like the gray, black, white, and you've got blue and orange as accents. But it looks great. I mean, if you look at like the marketing material for Portal 2, it all looks really clean, really great, and I've always really loved the layout and look of this game. Story wise, in the single player campaign, you do have a bit of story. Now, you do wake up in this facility, the laboratories, the Aperture Laboratories, which is one of my favorite names for a laboratory. You wake up in this facility not once, but twice, and you're introduced to both Wheatley, who promises to get you out of this facility, and then you encounter GLaDOS, who you have encountered before, and she remembers you very well. So you are forced to then kind of test, which is what they call it, testing. But basically, you're going from room to room and figuring out puzzles. Now, as I said, I've played this. This has got to be maybe my 6th or 7th time playing this. But it doesn't mean that I remembered all of the puzzles. I really, really didn't. In the beginning, yeah, they're kind of easy, and it's just, okay, place the box here. But as you get, higher in difficulty in the rooms, you end up having to spend a few minutes trying to figure out what looked to be a very simple puzzle. So that's one thing that I've always enjoyed about this game, is that the puzzles, although sometimes look really simple, are fairly complex, and it's a lot of fun to figure them out. And I think that even though, it has a very basic and simple story, it is engaging. I find myself always laughing in each and every single time I've played this game through, whether it's in the first person or in the 2-person player game. I have found myself laughing at all of the things that GLaDOS says to me. She is really mean. She is very insulting, but it is so much fun to just hear her and interact with her. And then you have Wheatley, who gives you a bit of a surprise. And then you kind of are introduced to Cave Johnson, which is a whole nother character in and of itself. So you have these 3 different characters with very, very different but yet similar personalities that just make this game so much fun to play, just to hear what they're gonna say next. Playability wise, I think this game is one of the best playable games that you could ever buy. You have 2 whole different realized campaigns. You have the single player mode, which you go through a whole full storyline, and all the puzzles and all the rooms are very different. And as you get further and further along the game, they become more and more challenging. And then you have a dual campaign mode, which the story's a lot more muted. It's very different. It's not as engaging as the first person, but that's because you have a whole other element of playing with another player. And you think, oh, we're just going to do the same puzzles. No, you are not. They are totally different puzzles, very different, and they're just as challenging as when you're playing in the single player mode. So I absolutely love that about this game, where I have to challenge myself to play by myself, and then I can fully challenge myself to then play with a partner and figure things out together. And sometimes that's the fun of it, and sometimes that's the frustrating part of it. Because I've played with certain players where we've had a lot of fun, and it's been really challenging and fun to kind of get through certain rooms. And then I've played with other players where I'm just like, "Oh, this is like pulling teeth. Like, can we just figure this out?" So there could be those two elements of it, but it's a lot of fun, I will say. Final thoughts on this game. Honestly, this game is like in my top five. If it is not number one, it is like number two or three, but it's not further down than that. I will love this game for a very long time. I waited for so long to see a Portal 3, and I wish that it would have come to pass. Unfortunately, it didn't really come to pass, and I don't think it's going to happen. I know they've done like some spin-off kind of things, but it just wasn't a fully realized game, and it wasn't what I wanted. So don't think I'm ever gonna see another Portal game. So I'm gonna hang on to my Portal 1 and 2, because these games are fantastic, and the playability of them, yeah, there's playability, there's replayability. I will probably not play this game for a couple of years or 3 or 4 years, but I would love to revisit it again. I would really love to see this in a fully remastered version too. It would just be fantastic to have that availability. Because, as you move on in consoles, as you move on in, even PC land, there are times where it can cause issues, like, as for example, you can no longer play it on a Mac. I had issues with trying to get gameplay from the PS3, or, thankfully I still have a PS3, but what if my PS3 breaks down someday? Then I won't have the chance to play this game unless it's either remastered or it's still available on like the Steam platform. So, again, wonderful game, from the graphics, which still look pretty fantastic. Sound design is fantastic. The control layouts are great. They didn't try to do something fancy, they just kept it pretty simple. The storyline is really nice and easy to follow as you go through these rooms, and you will encounter a bunch of different characters, including these little turrets. As you can see, the one that I just picked up right there, I actually have a Funko Pop of one of these. They're one of my favorite aspects of this game, though I also do absolutely hate them because they're sometimes really tough to get by if you don't kind of move fast enough. But that's going to be it from me today about Portal 2. I really hope you enjoyed my thoughts on this game. And this is available here for you to pick up at the library, both on the PS3 version and the Xbox 360 versions. So if you haven't ever played it and you're in the market for a puzzle game, this is definitely going to be my number one recommendation for anybody that wants to play a puzzle game. So I'll see you next time on the gameplay series, where we'll go through another game. And maybe one of these days I'll actually turn one of these into a Let's Play. This time I was planning to do so, but again, I ran into so many game capture issues that I just kind of decided to capture what I could and then give you my thoughts. So I'll see you next time with another gameplay series video.